Hi everyone and welcome to the VeriSM launch webinar. My name's Claire Agutter. I've been the Chief Architect on the VeriSM project and I'm really excited to share this new service management approach for the digital age with you. We've worked with a huge global group from all areas of the service management community to prepare this, and today we're going to start the conversation with a wider audience about what VeriSM is, where it's come from and how we think it might apply in your organisation. So the agenda for today, you can see what we're going to talk about here. First, we're going to talk about the fact that the world is changing for service management organisations, and we're going to look at some of the context really that's led to the creation of VeriSM. Then we're going to introduce VeriSM, which, as I said, is a service management approach for the digital age, and give you a little bit of information about the roadmap for VeriSM, so what information is going to be available to you, and then how that's going to develop in terms of training and certification. We are so keen for VeriSM to be something that comes from the community, is developed with the community and kind of evolves with the community in service management as well. So this is the start of a conversation, and at the end we'll explain as well how you might want to get involved with this and how you can help us move this conversation forward. So the first thing to think about is the fact that for us as service providers, as people who work in service management, even as people who consume services, the world of services and products is changing. Every organisation now is a service provider. Even if you're an organisation that sells products, that sells something physical, you wrap in services around that in terms of responding to customers, in terms of logistics, in terms of the data that you need to predict how your consumers are going to behave. So the world is changing, and certainly within the service management arena, there's maybe a bit of a sense that how we work is not keeping up. There's lots of different terms. You know, we talk about service providers, customers, partners. We talk about alignment. We talk about convergence. We talk about innovation. The demands on our IT departments are becoming much more all-consuming as well. They're being asked to do more with less, be delivering brand new products while keeping things stable as well. So because of all these changes in our world, the way that we need to work also changes with that, and VeriSM is taking a new look at service management and service provision. So the first key concept and one of the real drivers behind the development of VeriSM is this concept of digital transformation. And digital transformation is a term that's used very widely. It's used in lots of different ways. So, you know, you'll hear people talking about digital disruption, you'll hear them talking about digital augmentation, digital optimization. But really what we're looking at when we talk about digital transformation is how is digital technology changing all of our business processes? And you can think about examples there in your own everyday life. You know, how do you interact with your bank? How do you interact with your healthcare provider? How do you order a pizza to come to your house for delivery? You can look and see how technology is transforming all of these processes. And this is happening in all types and sizes of organisations. You know, we're talking public sector, private sector, large organisations, small organisations. Technology is no longer the remit of the IT department. Technology is there in every single part of the organisation, and for any type of business to say that doesn't apply to us, I would suggest that business is, you know, taking on some risk there, because everyone needs to be thinking about digital transformation. So you can see here some examples of genuine digital disruption. So you've got Uber, for example, which, you know, it's the world's largest taxi company, doesn't actually own any cars. And Uber's an interesting one because it's not necessarily getting everything its own way at the moment. You know, it does run into some legal difficulties in certain countries, but Uber is such a good example of an organisation that's come in and completely disrupted the market that it's moved into. And you can see in response to Uber that there are other organisations who are then trying to transform how they work and looking at how they can use things like apps in order to try and keep their own taxi company relevant. But, real examples here of companies that operate in the digital space that really maximize their use of digital technology. And a lot of this is driving change in development practices, in design thinking, in product management. All of these different areas are affecting how products and services are managed. And the key thing here from the VeriSM perspective is we need to react to that. We need to start having a way to manage our products and services in the digital space. So another example here is Gartner did some research and developed the top 10 strategic technology trends. So as well as changing how we work in response to these digital disruptors, we also need to change the emerging technologies and the systems and the applications that we work with. So for example, you've got factories that are involved in producing things, creating a twin of their factory, creating a virtual twin, so that if they want to change their production line, they can actually model that in a completely virtual environment before they make any physical changes. So again, you can see the pressure here on organizations. There are disruptions happening in pretty much every industry. The way we work is changing, the speed at which we work is changing, and then there's all this new technology to be aware of as well. So it can feel quite overwhelming, but also we have some incredibly exciting opportunities that are coming to organisations today, and it's finding a way to balance the pressure with the excitement and the opportunity and actually create something that's going to deliver value to our end customers, our consumers as an organisation. And it's not just technology and working practices that are changing. The other thing that's different is the skill set we need as service management professionals. It's not enough anymore to qualify in one product area, one standard or one framework and think that that's going to be sufficient for the rest of your career. The skill set that's needed is changing, and there is a real shift to this attitude of lifelong learning and lifelong development, and that comes from so many different areas. It comes from training, it comes from how we interact with our colleagues in the workplace, it comes from networking, attending presentations, it comes from interacting with our peers on social media. But a key concept is this idea that we need to be T-shaped professionals now. We can't just be a specialist in one area. We also need to have more generalist knowledge across a number of different areas, because this is how organisations are evolving. So earlier I mentioned that, technology is not just within the remit of the IT department anymore. That's a really good example. So in your marketing department, you might have a T-shaped professional whose specialist area is marketing, but they also need to have now generalist knowledge of social media, of analytics, of big data, and how that actually helps them to meet their marketing objectives. So the skill sets that are needed within organisations are very, very different as well. And that's a key part of the VeriSM approach, is this fact that service management is evolving, and that means at the organisational level, but it also means at the individual level as well. We have to start to transform ourselves in order to be relevant in this digital world. And one more disruptor, I guess, that is worth a real mention is cloud. Cloud has changed particularly the world of startups, but also for established organisations so significantly. Cloud is changing how organisations work, and it's democratising IT. Small companies and big companies now have a level playing field, because with just a small amount of funding, you can access hardware, data centers, technology, specialist knowledge that would have been absolutely impossible, 5, 10, 15 years ago. So cloud is also a significant factor in today's service management world, and it kind of changes what skills we need as organizations. It moves the technical skills, it kind of hides that complexity in another organization, but we need to think instead about sourcing approaches and about governance of suppliers. So cloud is having a big impact as well. And one of the key things to mention here is the fact that cloud is actually supporting organizations in becoming more agile and becoming more innovative, because we can experiment. We can try something very quickly and relatively cheaply, and if it doesn't work, we can turn it off, and that also wasn't possible. So cloud is really, really supporting innovation. So if you are a service management professional, and I'd imagine many of you that are watching this are, it all feels a bit confusing sometimes. There's new things coming out every day. It's the information overload age. And in terms of the best practices that are out there seem to be new things coming out every week, and you're supposed to be on top of SIAM and Agile and Lean and DevOps. And the emerging technologies as well, you've got to be aware of how all of those integrate with your role too. So it can feel at an organisational level and also at a personal level that the world has become a bit more of a confusing place. And we see the negative impact of this in organisations when they follow a trend or they try and follow some particular new route because they think it's going to be the one thing that really helps the organisation. So, we've decided to go agile, or we've decided we're doing DevOps. And there's no one of these that's absolutely perfect. So we need to kind of think about a new approach that means we're not constrained by just one type of thinking or one type of management practice. And I guess the thing to consider is, what's the impact if we get it wrong? What's the impact if we decide to go agile or we decide to ignore all these emerging technologies? What's going to happen to us as organisations? And I've got a quote here from the World Economic Forum that digital technology is the main reason that more than half of the Fortune 500 companies have disappeared since the year 2000. So that's a pretty bold statement and a pretty big fact for you to consider. And we've got the example here, Kodak is seen as a very common example of a company that perhaps didn't move with the times. And the other one that we have is the payments industry as well. So technology has hugely changed the payments industry. In the UK, we've gone from paying for things by card when you signed for them, then you put in a number. Now you just hold your card up to a machine, and before very long we'll just be holding our phones up to a machine. So this is another area where technology's had this enormous impact on business process and business strategy, not just the IT department. And in the payments world at the moment, what we're seeing is large numbers of mergers and acquisitions as organisations try and take advantage of the network effect and try and gain ground in this area. So what do we need to do as organisations? We've said it's overwhelming, we've said it's confusing, we've said it's exciting. What do we need to do? And the thing that we need to do is we need to get moving. We can't sit back. We can't think just because things are going well at the moment, we don't need to do anything. We need to start to think about how we evolve and how we respond. And this is where we start to introduce VeriSM, because we have worked with a huge group of people to think about exactly that. How does service management evolve and respond to these changes in our environment? So before I go into detail about VeriSM itself, I want to introduce the owner of VeriSM, which is an organisation called the International Foundation for Digital Competencies, which we'll refer to as the IFDC. And the IFDC is a non-profit organisation. It will own and manage VeriSM, and it's very much a community-focused organisation. So IFDC is very much focused on listening to the community and also on sharing with the community as well. So there's a real strong community focus here. And as part of the development of VeriSM, I've mentioned we worked with a team of global experts. So just to give you a few names of the companies that we've worked with, I won't mention them all because there are so many, but from the software world, we have got some case studies from vendors like ServiceNow, like Sunview, Atlassian, ITRP, Cherwell and Happy Signals. They've all been really generous in sharing with us how their customers are changing how they work and how they've responded to that. We've got some case studies from organisations who have undertaken a digital transformation programme, so the National Health Service in the UK and Auto Trader. We've got some perspectives from the world of recruitment as well and the world of talent. So the Cranford Group were generous enough to share with them how the employment world has changed and what people are looking for from candidates. And on the community side as well, we've had involvement from ITSM International. And the full list of authors is going to be available on the IFDC website, but I would say, just as Chief Architect, I just want to kind of repeat my gratitude to the service management community around the world, because the information that's been shared with us has helped us create something which I think is really quite revolutionary. It's evolutionary as well, but revolutionary, and it just wouldn't have been the same without all the people who were involved. So thank you all so much for sharing your time and sharing your knowledge. So we started by talking to the market and asking the market, what do you want? And we've just got a few quotes here from some of the organisations that we spoke to, and something that came through quite strongly was organisations don't want to start again from nothing. So one of the messages was, don't try and rewrite ITIL. Don't tell me that the way I've been doing my service management is wrong and I've got to start all over again. It was more about how can you help me as an organisation make sense of all of these different areas and all of these changes. How do I look at DevOps, look at ITIL, look at Lean, look at Agile as an organisation? How do you help me do that and blend all of these things together? So some really strong messages that we got, and we took those, and they very much shaped the scope of what we did and the way that we were thinking and the way that we approached this. We also did some research, and one of the questions that we asked was about whether organisations are trying to blend frameworks and best practices alongside IT service management. And the answer that came back there was very strongly, yes, they are. So most organisations that were surveyed were already trying to move beyond one product, one standard, one framework, and starting to look at a variety of different approaches. So that was, again, good insight, because what the market is looking for is something to help them blend different service management approaches and different ways of thinking, rather than another service management approach to add to all of the rest. And the other bit of survey information was the fact that only a quarter of the respondents thought that service management best practices had kept up with the changing IT and business landscape. So we have this kind of contradiction here, in that we're at a time when the world is changing possibly faster than ever before in the technology space, but service management, a lot of people don't really feel like it's keeping up. So we need something that can help organisations to adapt to all of these changes. So VeriSM tries to meet all of these perspectives and fulfill all of these different requirements, because it takes a new approach. It's flexible, it's value driven, and it helps organizations to create an adaptable service management model that will work for them and that will actually adapt and grow with them as their needs change.
Would you be so kind to tell us why you're so enthusiastic about VeriSM?
I think the main reason is that if you look across the industry, which I've been in for over 25 years, you can see there's complications that have started to arise with all the best practice approaches that are out there. People are often wondering, what the hell do I use? What's the most important thing? So I'm excited about VeriSM because I think the time is right now to think about how to pull together the really fantastic best and enabling practices.
It's very difficult to predict the future of services because 10 years ahead, it's a long time to see in our future. So for me, VeriSM is prepared to address the needs in the future.
Do you have one word for what you think VeriSM stands for?
Brilliant, I suppose. There's one word for you, brilliant. I think it's actually awesome. Because it represents everything that a IT professional needs to become a responsible corporate citizen.
The open character, using a mesh where you can adopt to the specific things for your organization. I think that's one of the most important aspects of VeriSM. You can choose what way of working you use in your organization and adapt that to service management and IT operations.
Yes, I think it's the word I would say is pragmatic. It's taking a lead, and another word is profound, because I think it's taking a leap forward that we in the industry need.
Thank you for your time, and it was great talking to you. I'm sure we will talk again.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your time as well, and I'm pleased that you're taking this step forward to do something quite important. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, some perspectives there from the author group, some of the members of the author group, and it's really good to kind of get their view and get their input as well. Now, one of the principles that we discussed as a group when we started to shape our ideas with VeriSM is this concept of, is there a single service management framework or product that works for everyone? Is there an average organisation or one size fits all? And we've got a nice little story that kind of illustrates that for us. So in the 1950s, the US Air Force measured more than 4,000 pilots on 140 dimensions of size so that they could create a cockpit that was suited to the average pilot. They used those measurements that they took to create the dimensions of the average pilot, and the idea was that anybody within 30% of either range of those tolerances would be average. And then what they did was they compared each individual pilot to this average pilot measurement that they created, and they found that out of 4,000 pilots, not a single airman fit their idea of what average looks like. There was no average pilot, just like there's no such thing as an average organisation. So one of the key drivers behind VeriSM was, how do we create something that allows organisations to have the opportunity to flex and to respond to changing business requirements? And what this requires is a tailored approach. There is no perfect answer. And we see this with many of the existing service management standards and frameworks. Organisations will take them and they'll try and adopt them and they'll try and adapt them, but they get stuck for different reasons. Some of them get stuck because what they try and do is restricted to one IT department, or it's restricted to one area of the organisation. Others get stuck because the framework that they're using actually constrains them, and they become obsessed with implementing a framework, and they kind of lose sight of the value that they intended to deliver. So VeriSM gives you the opportunity to do something different and to create a tailored approach which is absolutely unique for your organisation. And what we want to do is move from this existing situation where we're confused, we're overloaded, we're getting pulled in 15 different directions, and move to something that helps us and helps us deliver value through our products and services. So VeriSM is a way of making sense of everything that's out there in the world today and creating an operating model that works for you, works for your organisation, and allows you to take advantage of new management practices, new technologies, whenever they emerge. VeriSM's going to help you do that. So, in a nutshell, on a screen, this is what VeriSM is advocating. What we are suggesting is start with the business. Don't start in the IT department, start with the business and understand as an organisation what your governance objectives are, and then you can use those to define what we're calling service management principles. And service management principles are applicable across the whole organisation, not just the IT department and the technology. So if we think, for example, about a security principle in respecting the data of our consumers, that principle applies whether you take that data over the phone, via a website, or you write it down on a piece of paper. So the service management principles are defined at the organisational level. Once you understand your governance objectives and your service management principles, you can then start to integrate the management practices that are available to create a responsive operating model that works for you. So if you are working on a legacy product, or if you're working on something that's very new and innovative, you might actually be choosing different management practices because your operating model can be responsive, can be flexible. So some changes in positioning here and some changes in language. Service management is at the organisational level. It's not just a concern of the IT department, and we're not asking the IT department to think on its own. It's in conjunction with the rest of the organisation. So a key concept here is we want to stop talking about the IT department and any other department as a service provider. Asking parts of an organisation to treat other parts of an organisation like a customer isn't working. What we want to talk about is the organisation itself is the service provider. It has consumers or customers that it's delivering products and services to, and it's using all of its capabilities in order to do that. So we will have an IT capability, an HR capability, sales, marketing, customer service. All of these capabilities need to blend in order to deliver products and services. And if we think about IT or HR or sales as a capability, it allows us to change how we approach it. So if you think about your IT capability, that could be your IT department. It could be outsourced. It could be fragmented and embedded in all the other departments of the business. It's all part of your IT capability. And many organisations now are talking about shadow IT and the fact that they've got IT appearing in other departments. That implies that IT just lives in the IT department. And what we want to talk about the fact is that's all your IT capability. If the marketing department bought and paid for it, it's still part of your IT capability because it's fulfilling a need. What we need to make sure is it's still in line with our service management principles. So service management is at the organisational level, and the organisation is the service provider using its capabilities. We're destroying these internal barriers where we have this internal customer service provider relationship. All of our capabilities need to act like partners. And here we've got a representation of the VeriSM model. So you'll see at the top, governance is driving everything. What do we as an organisation want to achieve? What is our vision? What is our mission? What are our objectives? And that drives our service management principles. And service management principles again will differ from organisation to organisation, but we're talking about areas like security, risk, change, quality, financial management. All of these areas are part of our service management principles. We start with the consumer. What does the consumer need from us as an organisation? And then we follow a life cycle of defining a solution, producing it, providing it, and then responding to customer feedback and consumer feedback. So having a way of interacting with our consumers. The life cycle, the stages in the VeriSM model, is very, very high level because you as an organisation might want to be agile, you might want to be waterfall, you might have your own way of working, but these high level steps and activities are what's important. And round those stages, you'll see the management mesh, and this is the flexible part of VeriSM. It's the bit that makes VeriSM unique, because what the management mesh does is it allows an organisation to look at its resources, to look at its environment, to look at all the different management practices that are available, ITIL, DevOps, Lean, SIAM, Agile, and to look at the emerging technologies as well. So with each product and service development that we do as an organisation, we look at our mesh and we can check, is our mesh still fit for purpose? Is it appropriate? Do we need to evolve? So this isn't a single process flow. This is the VeriSM model, and this is the bit that gives organisations flexibility, because you can adapt your mesh as you need in order to build products and services, and that might be iteratively, it might be traditional waterfall. The mesh gives you the freedom to do that as long as you are within the governance requirements of the organisation. So what's in a name? What's VeriSM all about? Well, it's about value-driven, it's about evolving, it's about responsive, and it's about integrated. So VeriSM is helping you to make sense of all of these different elements that are out there at the moment. It's saying to you as an organisation, don't pick one product or one standard or one method and decide that's how you're going to do it. It's about being adaptable, and that's where VeriSM gives organisations some flexibility. There's the VeriSM logo. You'll be seeing that all over very soon, I believe. And also we have this definition of VeriSM as well, because it's not just an acronym, it's not just the value-driven evolving. VeriSM is actually a word, and it comes from the art world, and it's a form of realism which is about portraying things as they actually are, warts and all. And we thought that was very appropriate because we were trying to take a very realistic approach to service management. So why should you care? There's all sorts of new management practices coming out every week. VeriSM has come from the service management community, and it's been defined in response to the needs that were articulated by the service management community. Everyone is now a service provider. Everybody needs to understand where they fit within their organisation, how they deliver value. So I would suggest that whether you're an employer, whether you're an individual, whether you're a community specialist, you need to be thinking about what VeriSM means for you and how this could deliver benefit within your own network and your own world of work. So a little bit of information now about the roadmap and how you can learn more about VeriSM. So we've created a training scheme for VeriSM with certification attached, but coming from a very practical place. So the idea is that VeriSM training will equip you with skills to do things. And a big thing personally for me as well is it will have people leaving their training courses engaged and enthusiastic and ready to learn. So VeriSM, from the training perspective, it's about learning the key concepts. It's about looking at the management mesh in much more detail. But it's really about emphasising why service management is so important from the perspective of every organisation being a service provider. And there's an opportunity here to be a market leader as well and to be helping organisations as we start this whole VeriSM conversation. The certification modules, so the training path for VeriSM, we've got the foundation, which is the entry level, and that kind of teaches you what VeriSM is all about, and I'll explain those, the essentials and the plus on the next screen. But the foundation level is about understanding the concepts, it's the what, and then professional is about how. It's helping people to understand how they apply these concepts in an organisation. And then leader is about who, because leader is about validating the people who have applied these skills, who have done these things. So the idea is that you're starting with foundation, and that's giving you the knowledge that you need to support you as you initially start to work in a service provider. VeriSM professional then helps you develop those skills, and leader gives you that recognition when you've reached that point where you've actually done these things in an organisation. So leader is about confirming that people have got those skills, have got those credentials. So I said I'd explain the foundation in a little bit more detail, and the reason this is slightly more complicated is because there's a bridging option. So the VeriSM Foundation itself, if you're new to service management, or you're a graduate, you're new to the world of work, you would take the full VeriSM Foundation, and that's made up of two components. VeriSM Essentials gives you the service management essentials, and it talks about the VeriSM model, service culture, why service management is so important. And then VeriSM Plus, which goes into detail about some of the emerging management practices that organisations are using today. So if you wanted to get an introduction to DevOps, to Lean, to Agile, you wanted to learn a little bit more about consumer experience, that's what VeriSM Plus delivers. So those two halves make up the VeriSM Foundation. But if you have already got an existing service management certification, so something like the ITIL or the ISO 20000 Foundation, you only need to take VeriSM Plus, and that bridges you across into the new scheme. So if you've already got a service management foundation, you take the part of VeriSM that deals with the emerging management practices, the progressive areas, and that then bridges you across, and you'll be awarded the VeriSM Foundation. So it's different options depending on your level of maturity and your current level of knowledge. So we've said this is the start of a conversation. We've said this is all about community. We want to hear your input, and we want to talk to you. So we are very keen for people to get involved. It's a community approach, and there's different ways of being involved depending on who you are. If you're an individual, get involved with the VeriSM conversation. Let's talk on social media, let's talk face to face. If you're a service provider, can the management mesh help the organisations that you work with? Is this an approach that you need to talk to them about? If you're a consultant, is this something to add to your skill set? If you're a training organisation, is this something that you need to be thinking about? So this community is only going to grow, and we are really keen to get feedback to evolve this conversation as VeriSM itself develops. So I really hope you've enjoyed that quick introduction to VeriSM. We had such a good time creating it with our big global group, and now we're looking forward to going live, and we're looking forward to a much broader conversation. If you want to talk to some of the author group, we will be doing the service management conferences between now and the end of the year. So you'll see us at the Open Group in Amsterdam, at ITSMF Denmark, ITSMF UK, Spain, Germany and Japan. You'll see us at the IT 500 conference, which is in Edinburgh, and you'll also see us at the Fusion conference, which is in Orlando. If you'd like to read a bit more, the VeriSM book, the first publication, is going to be ready later on this year, and training and certification is going to be available from January 2018. And you can see the web address there, so more information on the website, and get in touch, talk to us, ask us some questions. We are ready and waiting, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. So thank you so much for watching this. Really hope it's inspired you, and I'm looking forward to getting your feedback in the future.